I recommended the Godox TT350 mainly because of the size and weight and all of the features packed into it. I mean, this flash is very compact, and I think in the spirit of the Micro Four Thirds system. And you know how they say the best camera is the one you have with you, and I think that's why a lot of us switched over to Micro Four Thirds. Well, same thing goes for flashes. You're not going to use a flash if you don't have it with you. And just to kind of give you a comparison, you know, for example, this flash is really small. I can just fit this into my front pocket, no problem. And it's not bulky or heavy or anything. Compare that to, say, a full-size flash, this Nikon SB800, and this is a compact full-size flash. But you can see already it's nearly an inch thicker, right? And almost an inch taller. And this uses 4 batteries. So yeah, this will give you roughly double the power output because this is a 4 battery, this is a 2 battery, just to keep things simple. In real life, this is not going to be enough shooting through an umbrella in broad daylight. That's why a lot of the videos you see where people are doing high-speed sync photography, you know, they're using mono lights that are 400 watt, 600 watt second lights. You know, me personally, I use my 8200. This is almost 4 times as powerful as the SB800. But you know, like I said, for 95%, you're gonna be good with this, and that's why I recommended this. Now let me talk about the trigger also, because that there's a couple of different triggers that they offer. I recommended the X1T trigger, all right, over the X Pro trigger, because those are the 2 main triggers that I found, you know, from Godox. You know, if you look at the X Pro trigger, it's only like 20 bucks more, and it has a nice large display on it, and has a lot more buttons, so it's a lot easier to use. And it has a few more features, like you can control, I think, 16 different groups of flashes, whereas this one will do 5. So it has some features that professionals may be interested in. But as a beginning photographer, you know, 5 groups is more than enough. If you want to get all fancy and have 5 light setups, you can do that with this. If you need 16 light setups, then you probably aren't, you know, watching this video anyway. But in any case, but that's not why I'm recommending this flash over the X Pro. The main reason I'm recommending this over the X Pro trigger is because of this little hot shoe right here on the top. This will allow you to attach a flash onto the trigger and the trigger onto the camera, so that you now have the opportunity to use 2 lights in your photography without an elaborate setup. So let me give you kind of an idea of how that looks. This is my EM10 Mark II with the Godox X1T trigger, and this is like a generic $35 flash. And this is how I use the setup in my professional work in real estate, because I can set this camera up on a tripod. All I need is 1 more light stand and I'm done. And then what I do is I just bounce this, you know, off the back wall to provide some soft light, and then I use the light stand to, you know, extend the lighting if it's a larger room. And that's why I recommend this, because it helps keep your overall kit smaller, right? All you need is your camera. You could handhold this and have a light stand, or you could handhold this and handhold the other flash in your other hand like this and have a dual light setup, and you don't need a tripod or a light stand, you know, anyway. And that's why I recommended this, because this really gives you a lot more options. Now, there is one limitation though. Anything you attach to the top of this hot shoe here on the trigger, you're going to have to operate the flash manually. So you just adjust the power up and down until you get the light that you want. So you may have to do a couple test shots to get the lighting correct, but after you've been doing it a while, you get a really good feel for it anyway. So what I have set up here is my EM10 Mark II with the 14-42 kit lens, the X1T trigger, and just a generic manual flash here on top. And we're not going to be able to use high-speed sync because, again, we're shooting with this manual flash via the trigger. But I have the Godox TT350 off on a light stand over here, and that will be controlled via TTL through the trigger. So I'm going to have the Godox TT350 here on the light stand behind me to give me a little bit of a rim light. So the first thing you want to see here is basically we're in full auto with a custom self-timer, aperture priority, and we're just going to shoot JPEG. And then the next thing I look at is the exposure. And basically I have the lens, this kit lens, wide open at f4.5 at auto ISO 200. So what I can see here is that the shutter speed is blinking at 1/80th of a second. So the camera's telling us that it's not able to achieve the correct exposure because the shutter speed. And we can't go faster than 1/80th of a second because we'll be using a flash later. So I'm going to do a test shot within that 1/80th of a second. So I have two options. I can either lower the ISO or I can increase the aperture. And I always like to start with the ISO to see if I can lower that first. So let's try ISO low. And I can see that that didn't quite do it either. So now I'm going to have to start raising the aperture. And I didn't have to go too far, just f5. All right, very good. So let's take a picture here without any flash. All right, and nice normal picture, but if you look at it, again, the highlights are blown out just like yesterday or the day before when I was doing this. So let's add the flash. Now what I want to do is basically I want to have this flash on top of the camera give me just enough light to illuminate me properly and give me a catch light in my eyes. And again, it's a full manual flash, so we're going to have to experiment. I'm just going to start with, say, 1/8 power and see what that gives me with these settings. Now I haven't turned on the Godox flash yet. I'm only going to shoot with the flash here. All right, 1/8 power is way too much, so let me lower the power. Now we're at 1/16 power. So you can see that I'm pretty well exposed here, but the highlights are still blown out. So how do you do this when you don't have like high-speed sync? Well, the way I like to approach it is first I do exposure comp. I just lower the exposure comp, say 1 stop. So let's start with that first. And as you can see, the shutter is blinking at 1/80th of a second. Since we've already lowered the ISO, all I can do is increase the aperture. So we'll just do this one click at a time until we get just under 1/80th. So we're at f9. So we went from f5 to f9, which is a little more than a stop of light. So I was at, I believe, 1/16 power on the flash. So I'm going to have to increase that by a little more than 1 stop. So let's just add one more stop. So we'll go from 1/16 to 1/8 power. All right, good. We've brought some of the highlights back in. They're not totally blown out. I think we can do just a little more because we still have a little bit of flash power left. Let's try -1.7. Let's increase the aperture. We're at f11. So f9 to f11 is almost another full stop. So we're going to have to go to probably from 1/8 to 1/4, maybe a half power. And now the highlights aren't blown out, but I'm still a little bit underexposed. And I'm at 1/4 power on the flash, so I can add just a little more. Maybe I'll add about a half a stop. All right, good. I'm a little bit close, but the highlights are pretty much intact. And I'm not too overexposed. I'll just back up a little bit to adjust for that. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on the Godox TT350 here behind me. And I'm going to leave that in full TTL mode. I'm not going to do any manual settings with that. All right, and I think that's the shot I'm going to go with. I have a nice rim lighting around my hair and on my shoulders. And if I punch in a little bit, I have that catch light in my eyes because I have the on-camera flash. So as you can see, we can still get really good shots outdoors even when we don't have a high-speed sync. Now if you want to blur out the background without using high-speed sync, you're going to have to use a polarizer filter to reduce the light going into the lens. And I'll do that in another video.